Whatever a great vacation sounds like to your family, you'll find it in Tennessee. Experience new adventures at the world's largest freshwater aquarium. Catch some waves at one of our great attractions. Or you can just enjoy the sounds of the wildlife.
Whatever sounds good to you. Sounds like Tennessee to me.
For your free vacation guide, call 1-800-GO-TO-TENNESSEE, extension 9.
Life is great, a real adventure.
We can do so much.
But we have to make good choices.
Like not smoking.
Smoking won't make anything better.
It won't improve your grades?
Or your jump shot.
Some say everyone's smoking, but they're not.
It's a big waste of time and money.
And it gets in the way of your dreams and your goals. So reach high, live big.
Be smoke-free.
Fox Red Storm Seeker only on Fox 13 News.
We interrupt our program for this special report.
Forget something?
There's a...
Hours of the morning, just after the raid occurred, saying that she has always promised that they would try to maintain the peace, and she will continue to keep that promise.
We should mention that we had an interview with Rick Holder, the Deputy Attorney General, earlier. He, of course, Eric Holder denied that there was any intention to create any sort of ruse in the negotiations with the family overnight, that the government's efforts were sincere in negotiating with the family, and simply those negotiations broke down. That led to the raid at about 5:10 a.m. Eastern Time.
And again, David, we were expecting the president to start talking at 10:15 Eastern Time. That seems to be running a little bit late. There's a picture of the White House. We're still waiting for the president to step up to the microphone, though. He's just behind those windows in the Oval Office, again, waiting for the president to speak. As we await the president's comments, let's turn back to our correspondent Orlando Salinas in Little Havana in the crowd. Orlando?
Thanks, Bridget. You know, as this morning has been developing, certainly we've been hearing all kinds of stories and words coming out from what has happened with Elián González. Joining me right now is Janet Ray Weininger. Now, her husband is the vice wing commander at Homestead Air Force Base. He has nothing to do with what happened this morning. He is a U.S. serviceman. Janet, you were telling me something very interesting this morning. Your phone is unlisted. Your husband has a very high rank in the service. Tell me what you heard happen.
I received a phone call this morning saying, Janet, when they put him on the plane, he was crying, screaming, calling out for marisieses. He was terrified. They said it was terrible. It was terrible. And this was a person who was in tears, voice breaking, just could not believe it.
And you were telling me that, again, this is a person that you trust, a person that you know. You have an unlisted phone number, obviously, so people who have that number know you. And it was, for lack of a better way of saying it, I guess, somebody who had some inside information about what had happened.
Yeah, it was someone, in my impression, who wanted to convey how horrible it was to them. I'd also like to say this. My father was an American pilot who was killed during the Bay of Pigs that Castro kept on display on exhibition for 18 years.
Janet Ray Weininger, thank you very much for joining us and giving me that bit of information. Thank you very much. Okay, Bridget, David, back to you.
All right, Orlando, we should mention, by the way, that according to the government sources, Eric Holder and others, Elián was okay during the flight from Miami up to Washington to be reunited with his father, that they had various toys for Elián to play with, that his attitude was all right. Of course, that differs dramatically from the version that we just heard. We are awaiting a talk by the president at the White House. Our James Rosen is standing by at the White House. James, can you describe as best as you know it exactly the activities that took place between Janet Reno and Bill Clinton in the last 24 hours?
Absolutely, David. Contrary to a lot of the criticism that the president has received over the course of the Elián González case, that he has not been directly involved enough in the case, the last 24 hours show that he played a very direct role in sanctioning the use of force in this operation. According to Janet Reno, the Attorney General, and also White House officials, the president was briefed by the Attorney General repeatedly throughout late yesterday, 5 p.m. Friday, also 8:30 in the evening, Reno giving the president another update on the negotiations. Then at around 2:15 this morning, Janet Reno called the president again at which point it was still thought an agreement could be reached between the two sides. Of course, authorities here in Washington negotiating with the Miami González family down in their home in Little Havana. But the president told Reno if the family did not agree to voluntarily turn over Elián, he best believed the option was to go in and get Elián from the Miami home. Just before 5 in the morning, John Podesta, the White House chief of staff, awakened the president to inform him that the negotiations had failed, that it was no longer believed they could be fruitful, and that the order to go in and get the boy was needed. The president gave that order, expressing his disappointment that negotiations had failed. And then again at 5:30 in the morning, Podesta called the president to inform him that the operation had been carried out and carried out successfully, that Elián had been removed from the home, and that no one had been hurt with major injuries in the course of the operation. Just before 6 in the morning, President Clinton again spoke to the Attorney General, presumably to congratulate her on the successful removal of Elián from the house. Now, as we mentioned earlier, we are expecting President Clinton to speak at any moment just outside the Oval Office to give us his comments on this stage of the Elián González crisis. He is running a few minutes late, but it is interesting to note that the criticism the president has received very different from what has been swirling around in terms of controversy around his vice president, Al Gore, who has spoken forcefully on the Elián González case, albeit in apparent different directions from what he would say at one point to another. The president not receiving that criticism, that he's been inconsistent on the Elián González case, just criticism that he hasn't spoken out enough, that he has perhaps delegated too much of the heavy lifting to his Attorney General, Janet Reno. But just last weekend, when he was out at the National Sequoia Forest in California, the president made it clear he has been briefed by Attorney General Janet Reno and that she is the one managing the day-to-day details of this operation, and apparently it continued thus so until this pre-dawn raid earlier today. David and Bridget.
James, thanks. Of course, we will head straight back to the White House as soon as the president starts to make his remarks. We were expecting him to speak at about 10:15 Eastern time. Seems that presidential news conference running just a little bit late, so...
Not unusual, we should mention.
No, not unusual at all. So now's the time to recap a little bit of what's happened this morning. If you're just turning on, it started happening at about 5 o'clock Eastern time when federal agents, a group of about 20, went into the Miami home where Elián has been staying with his relatives in the arms of the woman, Spanish-speaking agent, as far as we understand, taking him into that white van. But perhaps a even more dramatic picture was taken inside the home, the one you're looking at right now, with a federal agent with little Elián in the arms of Donato Dalrymple, the fisherman who rescued him from the sea back on Thanksgiving. Holding Elián, and the federal agent, as you can see there, pointing a gun, if not at them, at least toward them. And this picture, the subject of much conversation and controversy in the days and weeks and months to come.
Certainly so. Now, we should mention that were we to take the advice of Gregory Craig, who was the president's lawyer during the impeachment trial and is now acting as a lawyer for the father, Juan Miguel González, you wouldn't have seen those pictures. He sent us a letter on April 20th to Roger Ailes, who's the chairman and CEO of Fox News. There's a picture of the letter. It was also sent to ABC, NBC, CBS, a number of other news organizations, saying we should not cover the pictures of Elián being taken away from his Miami relatives, that would simply increase the trauma that Elián González had gone through these past 4 or 5 months. Of course, when you look at those pictures of Elián being taken away, it's hard to imagine anything more traumatic. Of course, we must remember that it was on Thanksgiving Day. Elián was picked up after having seen his mother float away, and of course she drowned. He was for 48 hours in the ocean. There is another picture, one that we haven't seen. Presumably that was immediately before the agent with the gun drawn, with the automatic weapon drawn, took Elián away from Mr. Dalrymple there. That, ironically, there's so many ironies in there, that is the man who, along with another fisherman, plucked Elián out of the ocean. And here he was taken away. Elián was taken away from this man by federal agents with guns drawn.
And once he was taken into that van, what happened after that? Elián was taken to the airport. He was flown to Andrews Air Force Base outside of Washington, and his father is expected to meet him shortly. His father, Juan Miguel González, leaving the home in which he's been staying in Bethesda, Maryland, taking a white Suburban to Andrews Air Force Base, where he will be seeing his son. We had word from our correspondent Rita Cosby in Washington that there was the possibility that the two could spend a few days there at Andrews Air Force Base until they decide on a somewhat neutral location outside of Washington, D.C. They didn't want the meeting between the father and the son to occur in the Cuban interest section. There was a lot of talk that that would not be neutral ground, that there would be the appearance of control from Fidel Castro's government if it were to occur there. There's also some talk that the father simply wants privacy.
Well, indeed, there's the question also of the U.S. Court of Appeals decision, the 11th Circuit Court, which suggested that in no way until hearings in the middle of May should this boy appear on Cuban soil. Now, there's been some question as to whether were he to be in the presence of Cuban officials in the Cuban interest section, which actually acts as the embassy for the Cuban government, whether or not that would be Cuban soil. And in fact, that would be a direct violation of the circuit decision.
We are still waiting to hear from President Clinton. He still has not emerged from the Oval Office at the White House. We'll, of course, take you there just as soon as he steps up to the microphone and makes his comments. In the meantime, we should let you know that the Attorney General herself, Janet Reno, had some comments earlier this morning, and she had another official by her side. This is a government person saying that Elián was unhurt and that he had been given a physical exam by a doctor before he boarded the plane this morning. They say that they took great pains to explain carefully what was happening to him, that he had been given a play kit, including some toys and some Play-Doh, an airplane, a map, and a watch to try to keep him happy and occupied on the plane. And here's President Clinton stepping up to the podium right now. Of course, he'll be commenting on the raid this morning. Let's take a look and a listen.
Good morning. Maybe I should wait for the plane, huh? As all of you know, this morning, 6-year-old Elián González was reunited with his father, Juan Miguel González. The Department of Justice, under the leadership of Attorney General Reno, went to great lengths to negotiate a voluntary transfer. Even yesterday, the Attorney General worked very hard on this late into the night, showing great restraint, patience, and compassion. When all efforts failed, there was no alternative but to enforce the decision of the INS and the federal court that Juan Miguel González should have custody of his son. The law has been upheld, and that was the right thing to do. I am well aware that this has been a difficult time for all the parties involved. But let's remember, as I said from the outset, the most important thing was to treat this in a lawful manner according to the established process. This was in the end about a little boy who lost his mother and has not seen his father in more than 5 months. I hope with time and support, Elián and his father will have the opportunity to be a strong family again. Thank you very much.
What was your role, and did you give the go-ahead for the operation?
Well, I talked to the Attorney General extensively, especially in the last several days, and I supported the decisions that were made. I think, we talked last evening, and then I talked to Mr. Podesta 2 or 3 times through the night. And I believe that it was the right thing to do. She made the decision, she managed this, but I fully support what she did. And it was clear to me from our long conversations that we were in agreement about this. She had a special feeling because she was from Miami. She wanted to resolve this in the most patient way possible to minimize the damage to the people and the community that she loves so much, but she felt strongly, and I felt strongly, that the law had to be upheld and that Elián had to be reunited with his father, and every conceivable alternative was tried for quite a long time. And so I think she did the right thing, and I'm very pleased with the way she handled it.
What can you say to those Americans who might be disturbed about the very heavy show of force, sir.
Wow. Wow.
President Clinton there walking away, not taking any more reporters' questions there. Somewhat of a surprise. We were expecting him to take some more questions there as he heads back to the White House. But the president did say what he had to, and that he said he fully supported what happened early this morning. In case you didn't know, Elián González was seized in a raid by government agents. And our coverage will continue. This has been a special report for Fox News. Along with David Asman, I'm Bridget Quinn.
This has been a Fox News special report.